Syphilis was the disease that no crown could protect against. It seeped through palace walls, defied noble lineage, and hollowed out the hearts of empires. Beneath layers of silk and gold, it destroyed dynasties not with swords or uprisings, but through slow decay, mental collapse, infertility, and scandal. It stalked the most powerful families in Europe, reshaping the fates of nations from within. Take King Luís II of Portugal, born in 1838, the second son of Queen Maria II. As a younger prince, he wasn't expected to rule. That fate fell on his older brother Pedro, crowned at just 16 after their mother died during childbirth. Luís, free from political burdens, led a charmed life. He was deeply studious, immersing himself in science, literature, and languages. His love of Shakespeare went so far that he translated many of the bard's plays into Portuguese, a rare intellectual pursuit for royalty. But Luís was more than a quiet scholar. He was charming, eloquent, and effortlessly seductive. His knowledge of languages helped him win hearts across Europe. For a time, he was the unofficial playboy Prince of Portugal, educated, handsome, and well-liked. Then came catastrophe. In 1861, disease swept through the royal household, likely typhoid or cholera. Within months, it claimed Pedro and two of their younger brothers, Fernando and João. Suddenly, Luís found himself king of a crumbling dynasty with no male heirs in sight. Portugal needed stability, and fast. Desperate to secure the line, Luís turned to family ties for marital advice. He wrote to Queen Victoria of England, his cousin, and to King Leopold I of Belgium, his great-uncle. Both suggested Maria Theresa of Austria, but she was only 16, and her father refused the match. Instead, Luís married Maria Pia of Savoy, the spirited 14-year-old daughter of the King of Italy. Her father, eager for the alliance, agreed. Maria Pia was enamored with her cultured new husband. By 18, she had given birth to two sons and fully embraced her public role as queen and mother. But behind the gilded facade, the marriage was unraveling. Luís never abandoned his appetite for extramarital affairs. His most notorious lover was Rosa de Lima, a celebrated actress in Lisbon. Maria Pia, heartbroken and increasingly disillusioned, began traveling abroad for extended periods. Whispers in royal circles hinted that she too may have taken lovers. Somewhere in this entanglement of royal infidelity, Luís contracted syphilis. At first, the infection lay dormant, but by 1887 it returned with horrifying force. Neurosyphilis began eroding his mind. He suffered from depression, violent mood swings, piercing headaches, seizures, and a gradual decline in mental faculties. The elegant, articulate monarch who once translated Shakespeare now struggled to form coherent thoughts. He died just 2 years later, in 1889, at the age of 50, a man consumed by the very disease he had unknowingly spread through his bloodline. His death marked not just the loss of a king, but the slow, hidden poisoning of a family line. In 1632, Abbas II ascended to the throne of Persia, modern-day Iran, at just 9 years old. But unlike many child monarchs, he didn't remain a puppet for long. By 15, Abbas had dismissed his father's powerful vizier and seized control of the Safavid Empire. At first, he ruled wisely. He avoided war with the formidable Ottomans, won key victories against the Mughals and Russians, and cultivated a reputation for justice and tolerance. Under his leadership, Persia entered a rare era of peace, security, and cultural brilliance. But the young Shah's brilliance came with a shadow. Abbas, like many rulers with unchecked power, began to indulge himself. Wine flowed freely in the royal palaces. His love of opulence bordered on obsession. Legend tells of him drinking from a goblet encrusted with rubies. a gift from the Russian Tsar. His court became known for extravagant parties that blurred the line between celebration and excess. Behind the thick palace walls, dancers performed for hours while musicians played deep into the night. Abbas surrounded himself with beauty, and more darkly, with a massive harem of concubines, many of them enslaved women taken from conquered lands. As Persia's economy faltered and political challenges mounted, Abbas withdrew deeper into pleasure. His absences from public life grew longer, sometimes vanishing for weeks after nights of wild revelry. His ministers began ruling in his stead while he spiraled inward, consumed by personal indulgence and invisible enemies. Somewhere in that descent, he contracted syphilis. The precise moment remains a mystery, lost in the haze of countless lovers and unchecked decadence. But by 1666, the signs were unmistakable. The disease had progressed, fast and vicious. His health collapsed. He became erratic and unstable, plagued by physical and psychological deterioration. He was only 34, but his body bore the marks of advanced neurosyphilis, tremors, cognitive decline, and delusions. His harem, once a symbol of dominance and pleasure, may have also become a reservoir of disease. Historians suspect that syphilis didn't stop with Abbas, that it may have spread among his concubines, quietly damaging lives in silence, unable to be recorded in official annals. That same year, Abbas II died, young, broken, and disgraced. The man who once brought peace to a vast empire was undone not by foreign armies or treacherous rivals, but by a disease he never saw coming. His death signaled the beginning of the Safavid Empire's decline. Without his leadership, Persia drifted into instability, ruled by weaker successors and fractured by internal strife. The golden age Abbas had helped usher in vanished as quickly as his health. One more empire had been corroded from within, not by battle, but by blood-borne collapse. Born in 1858, Crown Prince Rudolf of Austria was never destined for peace. Heir to the sprawling Habsburg Empire, son of Emperor Franz Joseph I and the beloved Empress Elizabeth, known to history as Sisi, Rudolf inherited immense power, but also generations of trauma. His childhood was fractured. At 6 years old, he was torn from his sister Gisela and placed under the care of an abusive tutor who prized discipline over affection. That emotional violence carved deep marks into Rudolf's psyche. As he grew, so did his instability. He turned to alcohol early, engaged in risky affairs, and refused to be molded by the rigid court that surrounded him. At 23, he was married to Princess Stephanie of Belgium. Only 17 at the time, it was a political match, not a romantic one. From the start, their union was doomed. During their engagement, Rudolf brought another woman, his current mistress, to meet Stephanie. The insult set the tone. Though the marriage produced a daughter, Elizabeth, Rudolf quickly withdrew from family life. Then came the catastrophe that would haunt the imperial household. Rudolf contracted gonorrhea and syphilis, both incurable at the time, and passed them to his young wife. Stephanie, unaware of what had truly happened, was told by doctors that her persistent pain was simply a stomach ailment. In reality, the infection destroyed her fallopian tubes. She would never bear another child. Betrayed and bitter, Stephanie refused to sleep with her husband again. Rumors swirled of her turning to a Polish count for comfort. Meanwhile, Rudolf unraveled. His behavior grew increasingly erratic. Desperate and spiraling, he begged one mistress to die with him. She refused, alerted the police, but no one intervened. So Rudolf turned to a new obsession, Baroness Mary Vetsera, a 17-year-old noble girl infatuated with him. On the cold morning of January 30th, 1889, both were found dead at Meiling Lodge. his private hunting retreat. Mary had been shot in the head. Rudolph's body was discovered nearby. He had died by suicide. In a rush to preserve the dynasty's honor, officials staged a cover-up. Her corpse was propped in a carriage, hidden with a broomstick, and buried quietly in a pauper's grave. The empire claimed Rudolph had died of an aneurysm. But everyone knew the truth. Syphilis had stripped him of his mind, stolen the future of a dynasty, and shattered one of Europe's most powerful royal families. The scandal shook not only the Habsburgs, but all of Europe. A generation that had placed its hopes in Rudolph saw its golden prince fall, not on a battlefield, but in a bedroom, drowned in disease and despair. His death wasn't just the end of a man, it was a prelude to the collapse of the empire itself. In 1647, John Wilmot was born into chaos and legacy. His father, a royalist hero in the English Civil War, died when John was just 11. That same year, the young boy inherited the title of Earl of Rochester. The monarchy had only just been restored, and Charles II, back on the throne after years of exile, took John under his wing. But courtly protection did little to tame the wildness in him. By 13, John was already enrolled at Oxford, where he reportedly became debauched. After graduation, he embarked on a grand tour of Europe, absorbing Enlightenment philosophy and, most likely, venereal diseases. He returned not only with intellectual firepower, but also with a taste for every earthly indulgence. At court, he became both adored and feared, a razor-sharp poet and a self-destructive libertine. He kidnapped the woman he loved, Elizabeth Mallet, after her family refused their union. The scandal landed him in the Tower of London. But with Charles II's forgiveness and a dash of military heroism in the Second Anglo-Dutch War, he returned to London's high society, eventually marrying Elizabeth. His family life, however, was no anchor. John was drawn to vice like a moth to flame. He became a central figure in the Merry Gang, a group of young aristocrats infamous for drunken brawls, pranks, and open mockery of traditional morality. He had a passionate affair with the actress Nell Gwynn, who would later become the king's mistress, and mentored another starlet, Elizabeth Barry, with whom he fathered a child. When her fame eclipsed his own, he abandoned her in resentment. Through it all, he wrote ferocious satire, scandalous verse, and philosophical essays that attacked hypocrisy, especially within the monarchy. One of his most dangerous moves was staging a play that mocked Charles II's notorious libido. In front of the king himself, it got him banished from court. Exiled but unrepentant, Wilmot reinvented himself, disguised as Dr. Bendo, a quack fertility doctor. He roamed London, offering dubious treatments to desperate women, many of whom he likely impregnated himself. Sometimes he even adopted the persona of Mrs. Bendo, allowing him intimate access to his patients. His double life blurred satire and scandal into something darker. But syphilis had been silently claiming him all along. By his early 30s, the disease had ravaged his body. His nose began to rot, his eyesight failed, and his mind slipped into delusion. Incontinence and blindness overtook him. Once the brightest wit in England, Wilmot was reduced to a hollow echo of his former self. He died in 1680, at just 33 years old, blind, ravaged, and destroyed by the disease he had once spread with such reckless arrogance. His poetry outlived him, admired even by literary giants centuries later. But behind the words was a man undone by appetite, pride, and infection. His life was a cautionary tale wrapped in verse, brilliant, obscene, and doomed. Born in 1678, Joseph I of the Habsburg dynasty was raised to rule one of Europe's most powerful empires. As the eldest son of Emperor Leopold I, Joseph's childhood was steeped in politics, power, and pressure. But behind the imperial pageantry, he was a man of private excess and public failure, a ruler whose downfall would echo through generations. From the start, Joseph was drawn to pleasure. Even as a young man, he surrounded himself with liberal thinkers and beautiful women. Lavish parties and endless affairs became his routine. His mother, Empress Eleanor, alarmed by her son's indulgence, sought to ground him through marriage. Her chosen bride was Wilhelmina Amalia of Brunswick-Lüneburg, a serious, devout woman 5 years older than Joseph. Before the wedding, she was medically examined to ensure she could bear children. For royal women, fertility was duty. At first, their union seemed hopeful. Wilhelmina gave birth to 3 children, including a son. But tragedy followed quickly. Young Leopold died in infancy. With no male heir, pressure mounted for the couple to produce another boy. But Joseph had no interest in fidelity. Every hunting trip became an excuse for indulgence. His close friend, Count Lamberg, reportedly arranged visits with peasant girls. Nobles, too, vied for the emperor's attention. One of them, Countess Marianne Palffy, became his official mistress, a shocking break from Austria's rigid court protocol. Even the Pope protested. Then came the moment that would haunt the Habsburg line. Joseph contracted syphilis. It was said to have come from the daughter of a palace gardener. Whether or not he knew he was infected, Joseph continued sleeping with his wife and passed the disease to her. Wilhelmina, devout and naive, mistook the symptoms for spiritual impurity. She prayed for healing, she prayed for a son. She received neither. The infection left her infertile. The emperor had destroyed his own line without even realizing it. Now the weight of succession shifted to Joseph's brother, Charles. But Charles and his wife, Elizabeth, faced their own struggles. Their only son, Leopold Johann, died in infancy. Desperate, Charles turned to strange methods. He commissioned nude paintings of muscular men to hang in his wife's chambers, hoping to stir desire. Doctors prescribed her a bizarre fertility regimen, rich foods and constant alcohol. Instead of conceiving a son, Elizabeth became obese and addicted. She gave birth to 3 daughters. That was all. Meanwhile, Joseph's reign collapsed around him. Despite 6 years of war, he failed to win decisive victories in the War of Spanish Succession. His policies brought chaos, and his expulsion of Romani people marked one of his darkest legacies. Politically exhausted, personally reckless, and physically decaying, Joseph died in 1711 at just 32. On his deathbed, he promised Wilhelmina that, if he lived, he would finally remain faithful. He never had to keep that promise. But his recklessness didn't die with him. Before his death, Joseph signed a pact allowing his daughters to inherit the throne if Charles had no sons. Years later, when that moment arrived, Charles refused to honor the agreement. The result was the War of the Austrian Succession, a brutal, empire-shaking conflict that stretched across Europe. Joseph had infected more than just his body. He infected the future. His reign was brief, his ambitions unfulfilled, but the damage he left behind would ripple across an entire continent.